The internet. A vast, invisible network connecting billions across the globe. It's a marvel of modern engineering, a testament to human ingenuity, and our desire to connect, share, and grow. From bustling metropolises to remote villages, the internet bridges gaps, bringing the world closer together in ways previously unimaginable. It's the backbone of our modern world, a digital nervous system that keeps everything running smoothly. Behind the scenes, countless servers hum with activity, processing and transmitting data at lightning speeds. Cities pulse with digital life, their infrastructures intertwined with the internet's vast web. From the moment our alarms buzz us awake to the last social media scroll before sleep, we're plugged in. Our daily routines are intertwined with this digital lifeline. We check the weather, read the news, and connect with loved ones, all within the first few minutes of waking up. We rely on it for work, for communication, for entertainment, for information. In offices, homes, and public spaces, the internet is omnipresent. Video calls bridge distances, allowing us to collaborate and connect in real time. Streaming services provide endless entertainment, while online platforms offer a wealth of knowledge at our fingertips. It's become as essential as electricity or running water, an invisible force shaping our lives in profound ways. Just as we depend on utilities to power our homes and quench our thirst, we depend on the internet to fuel our digital lives. It's a silent partner in our daily existence, often unnoticed but always there. Imagine a world where this digital lifeline suddenly vanishes. The server rooms fall silent and the blinking lights fade. People, once engrossed in their screens, look up in confusion, their digital connections severed. No more instant messages to friends, no more online shopping. The convenience of digital communication and commerce disappears, leaving us to revert to older, slower methods. No more streaming your favorite shows. The endless library of digital content vanishes, replaced by the static silence of blank screens. Entertainment, once at our fingertips, becomes a scarce commodity. A world where the constant flow of information dries up, leaving us adrift in a sea of digital silence. Newsrooms, once bustling with activity, fall quiet. The rapid exchange of information halts, creating a void in our understanding of the world. It seems unthinkable, impossible, a scenario ripped from a science fiction novel. Yet, the possibility, however remote, exists. The idea of a world without the internet feels like a dystopian fantasy, a stark contrast to our hyper-connected reality. Yet, the possibility, however remote, exists. Whether due to a catastrophic event or a deliberate act, the internet's disappearance is a scenario we must consider. The fragility of our digital infrastructure is a reminder of our vulnerability. What would happen to our hyper-connected world if the internet disappeared overnight? The bustling cities would go dark, and the constant hum of digital activity would cease. People accustomed to instant connectivity would find themselves isolated. The initial shock would be profound. Offices would fall silent, their computers turned off. The sudden absence of digital communication would leave us in a state of collective bewilderment. The world as we know it would grind to a halt, the hum of the digital age replaced by an unsettling quiet. Streets, once vibrant with activity, would fall silent. Shops would close and people would gather in parks, seeking solace in face-to-face interactions. The disappearance of the internet would be more than just an inconvenience. It would be a global event of unprecedented scale, forcing us to confront our absolute dependence on this technology we often take for granted. It would challenge us to rethink our relationship with the digital world and find new ways to connect, communicate, and thrive in its absence. The first signs of trouble would be subtle. Websites wouldn't load, emails wouldn't send. At first, people might think it was just a minor inconvenience, a hiccup in their daily routine. They would refresh their browsers, restart their devices, hoping it was just a temporary glitch. But as the minutes ticked by, the frustration would grow. The realization that something more serious was happening would begin to dawn on them. Social media feeds would freeze, their endless scroll coming to an abrupt halt. The platforms that people relied on for news, entertainment, and connection would become inaccessible. The silence from these once bustling digital spaces would be deafening. People would try to post updates, share their confusion, but their messages would go nowhere. Confusion would reign as people assumed it was a local outage, a temporary glitch. Conversations would start, with people asking each other if they were experiencing the same issues. In offices, employees would gather around discussing the sudden disruption. In public spaces, strangers would exchange puzzled looks, united by the shared experience of disconnection. But as minutes turned into hours, the unsettling reality would set in. The initial confusion would give way to concern and then to panic. People would start to realize that this was not just a simple outage. The internet, the backbone of modern communication and commerce, was down. The implications of this would begin to sink in, and the sense of unease would grow. The internet, the lifeblood of the modern world, was gone. The darkened screens and blinking red lights would be a stark reminder of the fragility of our digital infrastructure. People would try to troubleshoot, to find a way to reconnect, but their efforts would be in vain. The realization that the internet was truly gone would be a hard pill to swallow. Businesses would grind to a halt, their operations crippled without access to online systems and data. Meetings would be interrupted, projects put on hold, and productivity would plummet. Factories would stand still, their automated processes dependent on internet connectivity. The economic impact would be immediate and severe, with companies scrambling to find alternative ways to operate. Financial markets, heavily reliant on high-speed transactions, would freeze, sending shockwaves through the global economy. Traders would be unable to execute trades, analysts would be left in the dark, and the flow of capital would come to a standstill. The uncertainty and fear would lead to panic, with investors unsure of what to do next. Governments would struggle to communicate with each other and their citizens, their digital infrastructure rendered useless. Emergency services would be hampered, unable to coordinate effectively. The flow of information from authorities to the public would be disrupted, leading to confusion and fear. The lack of communication would exacerbate the sense of chaos and uncertainty. On a personal level, the chaos would be palpable. Families would be cut off from each other, unable to check in on loved ones. Friends would be unable to make plans, their usual means of communication severed. The sense of isolation would be profound as people realized just how much they relied on the internet for their daily interactions. Communication, so reliant on instant messaging and video calls, would revert to phone calls and text messages, networks overwhelmed by the sudden surge in demand. The infrastructure for these older forms of communication would struggle to cope, leading to delays and dropped calls. The frustration and anxiety would be palpable as people tried desperately to stay connected. Families and friends separated by distance would be left in the dark, their digital lifelines severed. The inability to see or hear from loved ones would be a source of great distress. The emotional toll of this disconnection would be significant, as people struggled to cope with the sudden loss of contact. The constant flow of information, the news updates, the weather forecasts, the endless stream of content would cease, leaving a void in its wake. People would turn to older forms of media, like radio and television, for updates. The lack of real-time information would be disorienting as people tried to make sense of the situation. The silence from the digital world would be a stark reminder of how much we have come to rely on the internet for our daily lives. The impact on essential services would be immediate and severe. Imagine waking up to find that the backbone of our daily lives has suddenly vanished. The ripple effects would be felt across every sector, from transportation to healthcare, finance, and emergency services. Air traffic control systems, heavily reliant on real-time data, would be thrown into disarray, grounding flights and leaving passengers stranded. The skies would become eerily silent as planes are unable to take off or land safely. Passengers would be left in limbo, unsure of when they might reach their destinations. Hospitals, dependent on online databases and communication networks, would face critical challenges in coordinating care and accessing patient information. Medical staff would revert to using paper charts and walkie-talkies, slowing down the delivery of care. Emergency rooms would become chaotic as the flow of information grinds to a halt. Banks would struggle to function, their online banking systems and ATM networks rendered useless. Customers would be unable to access their funds, leading to long lines and growing frustration. The financial system, so dependent on digital transactions, would face unprecedented challenges. Cash would become king, but with limited access to funds, panic and chaos would likely ensue. People would rush to withdraw whatever cash they could, leading to shortages and potential conflicts. The economy would be thrown into turmoil as digital transactions come to a standstill. Emergency services, reliant on communication and coordination systems, would face significant hurdles in responding to emergencies effectively. Firefighters, police, and paramedics would struggle to communicate and coordinate their efforts, potentially putting lives at risk. The efficiency of these critical services would be severely compromised. The internet's disappearance would expose the fragility of our interconnected world, revealing the hidden vulnerabilities of systems we often take for granted. Businesses would be unable to operate, and communication would be severely hampered. The digital infrastructure that supports our modern lives would be laid bare. The smooth functioning of modern society, so reliant on this invisible network, would be thrown into disarray, leaving us to grapple with the consequences. Streets would empty as people stay home, unable to work or communicate. The sudden loss of connectivity would force us to rethink our dependence on technology and the internet. In the absence of the internet, we would be forced to rediscover the lost art of traditional communication. Phone lines, suddenly thrust back into the spotlight, would buzz with renewed purpose. Letters, once relegated to the realm of nostalgia, would experience a resurgence, their handwritten words carrying the weight of long-distance connection. Newspapers and radio, once overshadowed by the immediacy of the internet, would reclaim their role as primary sources of information. Local communities, their digital ties severed, would rediscover the importance of face-to-face interaction, relying on each other for support and information. The pace of life, so accustomed to the internet's instant gratification, would inevitably slow down. Information would travel at a more measured pace, its accuracy dependent on verification and trust. The constant barrage of digital stimulation would subside, replaced by a quieter, more reflective existence.